Hi, this is Lauren Hines with Craft Some Joy. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about scrapbooking. Scrapbooking really should be accessible to absolutely everyone. Learning a few simple techniques can create a whole new scrapbooking experience. You don't need to get bogged down with complicated pages in order to create a beautiful scrapbook. Today, I'd like to share a few of my tips and techniques and go through how I like to scrapbook. Well, first off, my design philosophy is simple. Your photos should be the star of your pages, and your story is what makes those photos come to life. Everything else is secondary, because even with just pictures and words, you can celebrate your life and those most meaningful to you. Technique is really important. By using a few simple layouts, textures, layering, and patterns, you can give life and style to your pages without the process becoming overwhelming. Border strips, titles, and color blocking give your pages consistency while your eyes are still drawn to what matters most, your pictures and your story. Now it's time to get those photos off your phone, off your computer, or out of the cloud and in front of you. Great things can happen when you have photos you can touch and feel and reminisce with. First, let's talk a little bit about printing. The choices really are endless as to the best places to print, so you just need to choose one and get it done. One of my favorite things to do is actually print photos at home. I find that being able to print on demand is really beneficial to getting my workflow rolling and keeping up with getting my pages completed and worked on. I'm going to do another video on what I've learned about printing at home, and so make sure you check out that video in order to find out how I do print my photos for photo albums. But getting back to printing, there are a number of ways to begin when printing your photos, so you need to choose just what feels right for you. You can start with the beginning of the year and print 3 to 6 months at a time, or you can start with an event, trip, or a special occasion. Sometimes that's easier because when there's a beginning and an end, it's easier to see the finished product. When you're scrapbooking, a good rule of thumb is to print 8 to 10 photos for each 2-page spread. Next, you're going to need to organize your photos. That's when you want to take some time and think about what photos are going to go on what pages. And I always do take some time before I start on an album to do this. And a great way to do this is to use the photo folders that I designed. You can learn about that in my photo folders video, or you can just go to my website and download the free photo folder template. The best part is that once you have your photos organized, you only have to do it once. And it's easy to find your photos once they're in all the different folders. So that when you're ready to scrapbook, all you have to do is just grab one of your mini folders and you'll have the photos for the pages organized and at your fingertips. The next part of scrapbooking is to be able to get your supplies at hand and get busy. We all know that time is precious, and when you take time to create your album pages, you want everything ready to go, including your tools. There are some essential supplies, including trimmers, tools, pens, adhesive, your album, your pages, and some decorative supplies that you want to keep together so that you have them for easy access. I have mentioned that when I'm working on a specific project, I do like to contain myself to a certain palette. Like in this video, you can see I've used the Creative Memories Travelog collection. Everything is contained within that palette. It's so easy to make choices for my pages on what papers I'm going to use and what embellishments I'm going to use because everything is coordinated and everything goes together. Scrapbooking does not have to be hard. I've created a few simple rules that I follow most of the time when I create my pages, and I'd like to share them with you. I've been doing them throughout this video as you've seen in the time lapse, but I do want to take a minute here and talk about each different tip. So my first tip is snap to grid. I want you to think about your pages as having graph paper on them and then line up your paper, border strips, journal boxes, and photos according to that grid. Leave some small white spaces, and these are called eye lines, to define your grid, and presto, your layout is done. As I mentioned earlier, not only does the palette provide consistency, but this type of layout technique also provides consistency to your albums. Your albums are so easy to enjoy and look at. Everything looks like you've planned it, it looks cohesive, and it's so simple. It's not one of those Where's Waldo pages where you're trying to find the photo on the page because there's so much other stuff on it. My philosophy really is your photos and your story are the star of your pages. Everything I do follows along that philosophy. You get so much value out of your scrapbook by loading it up with photos. I just don't see a whole lot of value unless it's a very special occasion to only put 1 or 2 photos per page. I typically don't scrapbook that way. Okay, tip number 2 is color blocking. You can see I have done this throughout my album. I want you to try using large blocks of cardstock on your pages to add color and pattern, along with your decorative border strips, your border maker cartridge strips, your sticker strips, all of those different embellishments. But behind that, you can see I have taken simple blocks of color and loaded them vertically and horizontally on my pages. Now there's so many different combinations of how to do this. You can do it on 1/3 of the page, on 1/4 of the page, on half the page, on 2/3 and 1/3 of the next page. The possibilities are really endless, but it is so easy to do, and it just creates a really nice background for your photos to go on. Now, a simple tip that I like to tell people is that most photos are printed 4x6. And so all you have to do is cut a strip at 4.5, and either vertically or horizontally, those photos are going to be automatically backed with a little line of color. I love that look, and I do that quite often all throughout my album. So just remember that little rule of thumb, cut them at 4.5 if you want to put photos on top. Okay, my tip number 3. This is a big one. I want you to embellish with purpose. When it's time to add that special touch, here's a few pointers. Stickers and accents and memorabilia like to have a home and be grounded on your page. What I mean by this is that they like to be clustered and grouped together. That grouping creates impact and a kind of a place for your eye to rest and notice on the page. And these need to be just a nice, simple addition to your page. Clustering in groups of odd numbers are usually more appealing. So if you have a set of different banners or tags or something like that, try grouping those in sets of 3 or 5. And those are really a nice place that your eye can stop, and it's very appealing to look at. Okay, and let's move on and talk about titles. Titles are like the icing on the cupcake. I love making titles and putting them on my page. Much like a magazine title, titles are meant for you to interact with and kind of draw you into what's going on your scrapbook page. It's an eye catcher, and there are a lot of different ways you can approach making titles for your scrapbook pages. You can use sticker letters, bold fonts, letter die cuts, and one of my personal favorites is using my personal cutting machine. I am a big font girl. I love fonts. So one of the things I'll do when I'm looking for a personal use font is go to dafont.com and kind of look around and see what I think would be good cutting fonts. Then I load those into my computer and create a title sheet that I can cut all at once. Another thing this does is gives your scrapbook a consistency. So like with my travel album, we stopped at different cities on our cruise. I wanted some consistency, so I used the same font, the same size, and the same color, so that as a reader was turning the pages, they would know that, oh, here we are, we're at another city. Again, that gives your album some consistency and cohesion. So now a word about journaling. It really is important to just dig in and do your journaling. I know some people like to go ahead and type and print out their journaling and then adhere it into their book. And I think that's a great way to add your story to your album. But I also want to encourage you to always take some time to use your own handwriting. I know that I can pick out my mom's handwriting anywhere, and I think my kids can pick out my handwriting just about anywhere too. So that's a wonderful way to add some character to your album and some personalization. Now that said, I know journaling can be a little tricky, and there are times when you'll make a mistake, but like one of my favorite sayings is that mistakes are just proof that you're trying. There are so many different ways to fix mistakes in your scrapbook album. You might move a picture over it, you might create a journal box and just stick a whole new journal box down, or put a sticker on it, or you might just cross it out and say, you know what, that's life, and move on. Because your scrapbook really is a reflection of you, your thoughts, your ideas, your wishes, and your experience. And there's nobody else on the planet that can tell your story the way you can tell it. And that is what's so important about getting those thoughts down. Pictures are just pictures without the story behind it. I do encourage you to go ahead, jump in, get your favorite pens out, and take some time to think about how you want to add to the photos on your page. This will make your whole scrapbook come alive. I tell myself I can't put on a page protector until I've journaled on the page. That is my finishing touch. As I've mentioned previously, I do like to sit down when I'm done installing most of my pictures and memorabilia and embellishments and titles, and then just get in a quiet zone and think about what I want to say. If it's a travel album, hopefully I have some notes that I've taken along the way, or you might want to just have a notepad on the side where you can write some thoughts or write what you might want to say first, and then go ahead and put it into your album. I once had a friend who used to always journal in pencil and then pen over it, and then she'd erase her pencil marks. That works too. So whatever you find works for you, just do it. Get your story in there. It will make all the difference. I know that there is a lot of joy in craft, so your pages should be fun to create. You will notice that my pages have a similarity to design and what I like to call elegant simplicity. If you like this style, I really hope you come back and join me for other videos. Really, the scrapbooking process can be for anyone, not just creatives. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, I hope you take time to craft some joy. Bye for now.